Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon. I should say at the start, by way of an excuse, is that this talk was written by Helen Smith, who was due to give it up until about 3 days ago. And since I was here already with the British Arachnological stand downstairs, or across the way, when Helen couldn't make it, I said I would give her talk for her. It's awful giving someone else's talk. I don't know if any of you have ever done it, but anyway, that's by way of a preface, as it were. So I'm going to be looking at notes more than I would normally do giving talks. So the diamondback spider, Thanatus formicinus, it's a gem, not because of the obvious diamond marking on the abdomen of the species, but because it's the jewel in the crown of biodiversity in Nottinghamshire. And the reason for that is that the only population we know existing in Britain lives just down the road in Clumber Park. So it's a very important species for the county. And it may indeed be the only species in the county that is not found somewhere elsewhere in Britain. I'm willing to be challenged on that, but okay. So in this talk, I'm going to give you a bit of background to the species, as the intro mentions, a current assessment of its distribution in Clumber Park, and then what conservation actions are needed to ensure that these spiders have a more secure future in Nottinghamshire and indeed in Britain generally. So the diamondback spider is a running crab spider in the family Phylodromidae. So called because, with a bit of a kind of eye of faith, the spider's body looks rather crab-like, legs sort of stick out a bit, and they can run sideways, and they can run really rather fast. Globally, it's distributed across Europe and all across Asia to China and Japan. Also found in North America and in North Africa, so a very widespread distribution. But wherever it's found, we know next to nothing about it. And in these areas, these different regions, the spider seems to have, or it seems to live in different habitats. So, for example, in the Midwest of North America, it seems to be found in remnant, dry, mesic grasslands. In Iran, it's one of the most common spiders in cotton fields. In the Italian Alps, it tends to be found on bare soil that has recently been exposed by retreating glaciers. And in Bulgaria, it's found above the tree line on mountaintops. Now, if you can find some kind of common element in that, I'd like to hear about it. So, and this is not uncommon in invertebrates, that they differ in habitat from place to place, but that is pretty extreme. So it's probably threatened in many European countries, but the bottom line is we don't have any information to really say how threatened it is. So in Flanders, for example, it's on their red list as being endangered, but they just don't have any information about just how endangered it is. Is it almost critically endangered, or is it really quite common? They do not know. Almost nothing is known about its ecology, and as I mentioned just now, that's likely to vary substantially across its range. It's a large spider, as British spiders go. Females can grow up to about 12 millimetres, and males up to about 7. There is one other native Thanatus species in Britain, Thanatus striatus, And there's another one which has been imported into Britain, which turns up in consignments of crickets that people buy from various centres to feed reptiles and spiders or whatever else eats crickets. So somewhere in these places there must be populations of this spider. But Striatus, the other native species, also lives in heathland, and I'll describe the habitat of the diamondback a bit later. But this is the other species, much smaller, about half the size of the diamondback spider, and it does have a sort of dark mark here, but it's never black and never rimmed with white. And its distribution is shown here. So generally a sort of southern and eastern species on heathland. So the history of Thanatus formicinus in Britain is shown here, first recorded in 1894 from Bewley Heath in the New Forest, never seen there again. In the 1930s, a couple of populations were found in Ashdown Forest, and so this is Bewley Heath, Ashdown Forest, not been seen there for 55 years or more. In 2017, the British Arachnological Society published a status review for all British spiders, in which we looked at the distribution in terms of hectads occupied in Britain, and whether the number of hectads was going up or going down with time. And they were assigned conservation statuses on the basis of that. So the diamondback spider was classified as critically endangered, potentially extinct on the GP Red List. Literally 3 days after that report was published, a single specimen was found at Clumber Park. Which is there, as you well know. 300 kilometres from the last known location. So here are the people who discovered it. Lucy Stockton and Trevor Harris were volunteers at Clumber. Trevor is a well-known arachnologist, so when Lucy found this female spider, Trevor knew exactly what it was and the importance of it. And he got an awful lot of both local and national coverage in the press and online. Partly, and most of the coverage was positive. I mean, for a spider, which was fantastic. But most of it, we think, was probably a result of the kind of back from the brink buzz, you know, spider extinct in Britain. No, it's not. You know, nice story there. And also, it's an incredibly beautiful and photogenic spider. So both of those things together, I think, help to give it a sort of positive feel to the publicity. So that was in September 2017. In 2018, 3 of us from the British Arachsoc visited Clumber with 2 aims. One was to try to discover the distribution of the spider within the estate, and the other was to evaluate methods for surveying the spider. So this is, oh, sorry. So this is Gareth Jones, who is the, let me get this right, countryside manager for the estate. And it's on his shoulders that the responsibility for this incredibly rare spider sits. Good luck with that.
Gareth's that one.
Sorry?
Gareth one put it on? Yeah. Which one did you say Gareth was?
Oh, the one in the blue here. Sorry, in the grey.
Yeah.
This is Bill Parker, now our president. Here's a guy doing transcendental meditation here. This is Gareth's daughter. So what methods did we did we try? Well, one is suction sampling. This is very much used in spider surveying these days. It's a modified leaf sucker, and one can survey semi-quantitatively. So you can map out an area, say this table, and you can suck for a certain number of seconds right across the area, and you can get a semi-quantitative estimate of the species, of course, and the numbers that are there. It's best in short grass. It doesn't work so well in heather, as I'll explain in a minute. So this is what you get out of the, sorry, I should say the last slide wasn't a Clumber, but this is. This is Bill Parker with the contents of his suction device. And here we have all the leaf, the heather debris and a diamondback spider. And although they are very similar in overall coloration to the brash from the heather, they are actually very noticeable. They sit there with this sort of hunched appearance, which is what they do when they've just been stirred. So that's one method. We tested that method against the transcendental meditation method. This is called grubbing by arachnologists, and it involves getting down on your hands and knees, parting the heather, the sort of tough stems of heather, till you can see ground level. And this actually proved more effective than vacuuming, because down below here, the heather stems are very tough and they prevent the vacuum getting right close to the ground. So spiders that are on the ground would not be sucked up, whereas grubbing you can get down there. So on the basis of this, these trials, we devised a timed 15-minute search by grubbing. And this is the technique we're going to use. So you have a certain area, you grub around in it for 15 minutes, and you either find spiders or you don't, and then off you go. But it does need sunny weather, because the spiders are more active in sunny weather, and it's their movement more than anything that attracts you. The advantage of grubbing is, of course, you don't need any equipment apart from a pair of hands. Anyone can do it. You don't need to know how to work the vacuum device, and you don't need the vacuum device. And it is, as I say, more efficient than using a vacuum. So untrained volunteers can be put into the field instantly and can get quantifiable results. So Richard, I'm not going to go through this, but Richard Gallen devised a crib sheet which shows the characteristics of the diamondback spider, differences between Thanatus striatus, which also occurs in Clumber, and such a juvenile and a juvenile diamondback spider. So we can distinguish juveniles, which is always good. Spiders that can be mistaken. This is all these pictures are of the Busorum mirabilis, the nursery web spider, which can at first glance look remarkably like a diamondback spider, but once you look again, it's clearly not. And there's a Tibellus, which is another phylodronid, which is also found at Clumber. So as well as surveying Clumber, we also looked at other heathlands in the Sherwood area. This is the RSPB reserve at Dundee South Forest. Didn't find any. And we looked at a number of other sites around as well. We also initiated a survey of Ashdown Forest. This is where the spider was known 55 years ago, again without finding any trace of the spider. So within Clumber, we looked at a number of areas. We looked at the Lings, looked very suitable, nothing there. Lambhouse Heath, Thoresbury Road Heath, and the Icehouse Lawns, but it was only in the Long Valley that we found the spider. So this is where the original spider was found. The orange dots show where spiders were found in our 2019 survey. The yellow dots where spiders were found in 2021. Blue dots are where this semi-quantitative grubbing, sampling, 15 minutes, failed to turn up spiders. So the red area here is where the BAS has been surveying. The green areas are where the National Trust surveyed and failed to find any spiders. They found a few in here, but not in these green areas. There's one anomalous spider there. I'm not sure who found it. It was a male sitting on a water trough. I haven't a clue. It might have been dispersing, we don't know. So this is an area of about 50 by 750 metres. That's it.
So you've got one blue dot up there. Does that mean there's been very little recording effort up there?
Sorry, here?
Yeah, that's a blue dot saying that we didn't find anything. But how many?
That's right. We need much more recording. Okay, so we haven't gone, metre by metre. But yes, indeed. But it's interesting that there's, rather few dots actually within the red area. But so we may be defining the edge of the population. We really don't know. It needs much more work. Right, so just a summary of what we found. So 2017, it was first discovered in Long Valley. When I was involved in 2018, we found 12, 15 in 2019, 20 in 21, National Trust surveys in 22 and 23. They found small numbers, but all of them within the Long Valley. So it's apparently confined to about 5 hectares at one site in Great Britain. It's clearly very vulnerable. So why might that be? Well, it's not difficult to think of reasons. The main one probably is the loss and fragmentation of heathlands. This is the Sherwood Forest, let me get the name right, natural character area. And the map here shows what we suppose to be the distribution of heathland in 1774. In 2013, the red dots show the remnant heathland. So there's been a loss of 96% over that period, and that's shown on the plot here, how it's just been lost and lost and lost. And of course, it's not just the loss of area, it's the fragmentation of those areas as well, which is critical. So last year, the Knotsbag and British Arachnological Society, Helen Smith, got together and produced a species action plan, both local and national, for this endangered species. And that's it's on their Knotsbag website there. So what was in this action plan? Well, they looked at the threats to the spider. Clearly being in such a tiny patch of land meant that it was vulnerable to population decline, either because of bad weather or deterioration of habitat or parasites or predators or something. These days, of course, we're very aware of the vulnerability of heathland to fires. If a fire swept down Long Valley, that would be the end of the British population of this species. So that is clearly a real threat. Inappropriate management, that's less of a threat because we now know about the spider and are trying to manage the land in an appropriate way. But the heather could be totally decimated by an attack of heather beetle.
I know you're talking about, you've only found it on Clumber vulgaris heath.
Sorry?
You're only finding it on Clumber vulgaris heath at the moment in that restricted area.
Yes.
But you've already said that in Western Europe people live in a range of habitats.
Yes.
So have you surveyed other areas? I know you said you surveyed other areas of Clumber. Have
Yeah.
you surveyed a lot of non-Clumber vulgaris heath at Clumber? Because it's not necessarily, at the moment, because we know so little about it, it's not necessarily, it's always associated at the moment with Clumber vulgaris, but it doesn't mean it is.
Well, it was associated with heathland, albeit wetter heathland, in Ashdown.
Okay.
So, I mean, one has limited volunteer effort, and I think to look at other heathlands is the top priority. Right, so the action plan set targets, of course. One was to maintain the current area of occupancy as recorded in 21-23. The second target was to double the area of occupancy within Clumber and Sherwood by 2027 and quadruple it by 2030. And so this essentially is arguing that the area of occupancy within Clumber should be increased. So the heathland either side of where it is at the moment should be maintained and hopefully made more amenable for the spider to move in, but it's still a single site. So the third target was to increase the number of sub-sites within Clumber Sherwood to 2 by 2027 and at least 4 by 2030 to reduce the risk of extinction by a fire, for example, or something like that. And this map here shows that in the purple, it shows area of the Sherwood Forest Sherwood Forest natural character area, in which heathland could potentially be restored. So there's plenty of potential there for habitats that are suitable for the diamondback spider. But until we get there, we've got to keep the population we've got going and free from threats. So current initiatives are survey and systematic monitoring to establish the extent of the population in Clumber. Clearly there are lots of areas of Clumber we haven't looked at yet, and they need to be looked at. We need to understand the annual variation in abundance of spiders, which involves surveying over a number of years and seeing whether weather variables or heat or whatever has any obvious effect on abundance, and to establish the life history and phenology, about which we know nothing at the moment. We know, most of the surveys have been done in September, October. We know that females are mature at that time of the year and males are penultimate. But we don't know what happens next. We don't know whether males mature before winter or overwinter as penultimates and mature in the spring, and that's when mating takes place. We know nothing about it, and that is absolutely critical. You can't conserve a species about which you know nothing almost about its ecology. The BAS has been providing expert advice and training to National Trust and other organisations about managing the habitat and surveying for the spider, and habitat improvement, increasing the heather cover at Clumber, is integral to the National Trust's management plan for that site. So securing the future for conservation, currently the red listing, the diamondback spider is red listed in Britain as critically endangered, but it has no legal status. Anyone can go along there and collect a spider, as many spiders as they can find, and take them home, a lovely spider, pet spider. No legal protection at all. Only 2 spiders in Britain at the moment have legal protection, the ladybird spider and the fen raft spider. But there is currently a revision of the Wildlife and Countryside Act Schedule 5, and the plan is definitely to get the diamondback spider onto that list. It's also proposed that there is a Sherwood Forest important invertebrate area, 2A, whatever the 2A means, two spiders. One is the diamondback spider, and then the Zorus sylvestris, both critically endangered. So the Sherwood Forest Important Invertebrate Area is an initiative by BugLife, and it aims to identify areas of the country that are particularly rich in rare and endangered invertebrates. It doesn't have, though, these areas won't have any statutory implications, but it's important that planning authorities in those areas realise that these areas are of national importance for rare invertebrates. So BugLife is proposing this Sherwood Forest IIA initially with just this diamondback spider and Zorus sylvestris.
Sorry.
So, sorry.
So then they want to designate the area because of just those two spiders, or are there?
Well, apparently yes.
I think it is an area already for saprophytes.
Right.
When you go on their website and have a look.
Okay.
So I assume they're talking about an additional one for the spiders.
Possibly. Yeah, Helen Smith, I'm sure, will know the answer to that. But
I wonder if that's what the 2A means, maybe.
Sorry?
I wonder if that's what the 2A means, then maybe it's a second phase of that.
I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm not sure. Anyway, BugLife website is the place to go and have a look. Okay, thank you for that. So site safeguarding, Long Valley maintained as heathland by National Trust working in Natural England. And for the National Trust to make specific provisions for diamondback spiders. Now, some of those are already included in site management, but clearly, as we know more about the ecology of the spider, this management will be tweaked to optimise the annual management of the site for the spider. Species management and protection. So maintain a good resource of Calluna within and adjacent to Long Valley. Sort of said that before. New heathland restoration and connecting corridors to Long Valley. Again, I've almost said that before. We need other heathlands within Clumber Park to be developed or to be managed in an appropriate way, and for there to be corridors so that the spider can move out. We haven't a clue how this spider disperses. Silk, we don't, by ballooning, we don't know. Does it walk? We don't know. So we don't know anything about its dispersal ability. So corridors are essential in case it walks. And then if no further populations have been found by 2024, so that's this year, we need to consider the possibility and evaluation of local and national translocation programmes. So I'm sure we're all aware translocation is a very powerful conservation tool for all sorts of organisms, but it has to be done incredibly carefully. There are national and international guidelines, IUCN, for example, which is, their guidelines are here, to ensure that any translocation has the maximum chance of survival. So what do we need to know? Well, we need greater confidence about the spider's distribution in the area, so that's more surveying, essentially, of Clumber and wider. Better define understanding of the microhabitat preference. Identify receptor sites with suitable habitat that could receive these translocated populations. Better understanding of its life cycle, to inform how we can move spiders from this initial site where the population size might be quite small to another site without endangering the initial population. That's always the problem. But if we know enough about the sort of breeding site of the spider, it may be possible to breed in captivity. And this is what Helen Smith did to great success with the fen raft spider. She bred spiders in her kitchen initially and put them out into the fens because the initial population from which they came is so small. So this is where you come in. Okay, we need all this information. We need it fast about the ecology and the phenology of the spiders. So what they need is more survey and monitoring. If you'd like to volunteer for that, get in touch with Gareth Jones at the National Trust. If you're a student and are interested in projects involving the diamondback spider, or you're a potential supervisor of projects, undergraduate, masters, then get in touch with Helen Smith at conservation@britishspiders.org. Now, time's getting on, and let me just go over these last two slides. Essentially, this is pointing out that, that there are other very rare spiders in the Sherwood area, again, about which we know very little. And in order to conserve them, we need to know more and fast. So in 10 years' time, what are we sort of expecting? Well, we want a resilient, sustainable population, widely distributed on restored and connected heathland within Clumber and the Sherwood complex. Continuing commitment from land managers and volunteers to long-term monitoring, not only of the original population, but also obviously of translocated populations. We need to know whether they survive or not. It's often the case with translocations. You put them back, you look at them for about 3 or 4 years, and then they're left to their own devices. It needs constant monitoring. Possibly restore populations on the southern English heaths, where they were last seen 55 years ago. Removal from the GB Red List, so they're no longer under threat of extinction, and their addition on the GB Green List. Now, the Green List is a fairly recent innovation from IUCN, the International Union for the Congress for the Conservation of Nature, and what it means is that if conservation efforts have been successful and a species has increased in its resilience and is no longer under threat of extinction, if you just leave it, it may well go backwards again. So by putting it on the green list, this emphasises the fact that these sites may well need continuing maintenance or management, even though the spider is no longer red listed. So thanks to VS colleagues and Gareth Jones, Carl Hawks, and the National Trust people at Clumber, Richard Gallen for maps and photographs, NBAG for the Clumber Forum for their support, and all of you for sharing this story. Thank you very much.